So do you know the feeling of looking at a building with very impressive architecture and looking at its color and wondering, how can I mix that kind of yellow? It's not a bright yellow, it's a muted yellow. How can I mix that exact type of yellow? And I have the solution for you today, and that is Verona Gold Ochre by Daniel Smith. This paint really impressed me. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna show you what it looks like, and then we're gonna do a quick demo of an initial wash, including that paint. So just a couple of words on the paint itself. It is Pigment Yellow 43, which is natural yellow iron oxide, and it has so many advantages. First, it's a series 1, so it's not that expensive, which is good because the more higher tier Daniel Smith paints, and by the way, did I mention it's Daniel Smith? The higher tier Daniel Smith paints can be a little pricier. It has excellent lightfastness. It is transparent if you prefer transparency. It is non-staining, and it is granulating. So if you like all of these together, you're probably gonna love this one. It can produce beautiful muted greens and muted blues and muted yellows. So I really think you're gonna love this one. So now we're gonna take it to the table. We're gonna do some swatches and some mixes, and then I'm gonna do the demo. So I'm gonna get started by filling in some of the Verona Gold Ochre in my palette. So I'm gonna place it here on top of other paint that I haven't used in a long time. Actually, I'm thinking of soaking the entire palette in water and letting it clean up, but we'll see about that. So in any case, here is the paint straight out of the tube. Hopefully that gives you some kind of an idea of what it looks like already. I'm gonna close the tube and we'll get started. And this time I'm keeping things simple as in most of the paint show episodes, but I will, as mentioned, show you a more detailed demo in just a moment, okay? Now you see the water is a little contaminated, which is funny because I cleaned them, but that's not gonna pose a problem. So the paint is really, it's hard to explain, but it's hard, like physically it's hard. And what this means is it's kind of similar to my Sennelier Raw Sienna in that regard. It feels very similar. Okay, so I'm starting with a very light paint. I'm gonna add a bit more as we go along here, and it does feel like that, and it is a beautiful gold, and it is great for perhaps yellow walls of buildings because it's not too vibrant, it's not too strong, which is great. You don't want building walls to be, you know, too saturated and too yellowy because they aren't for the most part. So this is a really nice way of getting a very easy mixture of yellow that's a little muted and a little neutralized, which I love. So here I grab a bunch of paint. And as you can see, the value range isn't too great on this one, but that's fine. That's actually part and parcel of it. And its use isn't necessarily for, you know, very dark values. More of an underpainting kind of a wash, or maybe several glazes. Next up, we're gonna do some wet in wet. So sorry about that, I moved the table a bit. I'm gonna first wet this area, pre-wet the surface. This is Saunders Waterford paper. All of the list of materials are in the description box below. It's a bit of a thirsty paper, okay, so you have to take that into account. It's not 600 grams or anything like that, but it is 300. So yeah. So just dabbing the paint. It's very reserved in how much it flows, I can see, because some paints immediately you will see them flow, and it's not because of the lighter value. It actually seems to be a little less of a movement to this one. So that can happen. That's depends on the type of paint. I put in some really thick paint here just so that we can see it well. So this is really a great option if you're looking for a more muted, I would say even if you're painting European buildings or anything like that, architecture, this is great because you get that beautiful muted yellow without trying too hard. Next up, we're going to do some dry brush. I always love seeing the texture of the paper, and there is a bit of water. It's not fully dry, which leads to an interesting effect. It's really a nice exercise to try and work with all brush stroke directions. So to try to go right, left, top, and different angles as well, pushing against the hair of the brush. It's just a nice way of slowly getting to know your brush a little better. So let's set this aside and now focus on some mixes, okay?
So I'm gonna start with a bit of yellow here, and let's go for a green mix. So I'm gonna grab a bit of phthalo blue, a very strong blue, and these should produce a very nice little grayed out green. You can see here, very muted and very, I don't know, I guess just dull compared to others. So next up I'm gonna try the same with French Ultramarine, and again all of the green mixes we're gonna get here are quite light, quite muted, and here with French Ultramarine it's even more muted and dull. This is really great. I actually love these kinds of I think these could work really well for tree trunks and things like that. Surprisingly well, so I would really be curious to try that out and see how that works. Kind of when you want to get this brown green combination, you want to get a natural feeling, I think this is a really good paint. Let's try a bit of orange mixes. So let's get a bit of that yellow, like so. And in just a moment I'm going to show you how this plays out in the context of full painting. So with this sort of Parylene red, it's very middle of the road red, I would say. It's not too warm, not too cool. It's not a cadmium, but it's also not a quinacridone rose or anything like that. You get a very nice little yellow mix here. Someone was ringing the bell, so I had to get up for a moment and cut the video. I hope they don't come here, then I'll have to pause it again. But in any case, this is what you get. Let's try mixing it with some Carbazole Violet, because violet and yellow can neutralize each other in a very interesting way, I find. So as you can see here, the thing is that this yellow is really light and the Carbazole Violet is very dark. So you get a bit of an interesting combination there. This is really fun. Just messing around with paints occasionally is a good way of becoming more familiar with them and just with the watercolor technique in general. Let's try it out with some of the Quinacridone Burnt Orange. I don't know what will happen, but just willing to try. Because sometimes I will use a yellow in conjunction with other paints to create variation. Let's try even Nickel Azo yellow that you see is a much brighter and more vibrant yellow. And that's actually an interesting comparison. Let me show you. So this is the Verona, and this is the Nickel Azo yellow. So you can see the huge difference between them. So anyways, I will spice up the normal yellows with perhaps some different colors like reds and even blues. So it's nice, or oranges, you know. So it's nice seeing how these two mix together. So in any case, this is a beautiful paint. Could be useful for many different things. Now what I want to do is switch things up, and I'm going to show you the initial wash of a painting I'm going to start working on and how this paint comes to play in it. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I do the initial wash and use this paint. Now I actually am using quite a muted blue mix here, and I'm doing that on purpose. I want this to be a rather muted palette painting, if you will. I'm going to start like that, maybe just a bit more touch of blue. Now here, as we come towards the buildings, I want to start combining some of that Verona Gold Ochre. Okay, so just a bit. And it's barely going to be visible, and that's the way I want this one to go, because you'll see how in some other places I will make it a little more visible. Okay, so this is a beautiful scene from Jerusalem, actually. I need more water, otherwise everything is gonna dry on me here. And I gotta work a little fast. Let's add a bit of red to the mix here, just for variety's sake. Here we go. Now around the dome, I'm gonna kind of negative paint, but then I'm gonna come back with a bit of a stronger yellow, and that's when it's really gonna shine. Okay, so it's still quite muted. I'd actually like to do some wet details here, because it's all gonna be kind of out of focus, this area, but we'll see. Maybe I'll do that in the next wash. Actually, that could be an option as well. Now here we go, I'm going to start working on the dome, and I'm going to pick up both Nickel Azo Yellow and the Verona Gold. And with the dome, I want it to really shine, okay? So lots of both. And I find that this combination works really well. I like the variety and how it looks. Next up, I'm going to need a bit more of that muted mixture right around here. And let's cool it off around the bottom. So a bit more blue. Now I do want to lift back a highlight on the dome. That's really important around here. Okay, it should be lighter. All of this area, kind of like that. And I think this gets the effect across. I may do another round of kind of lighting it up. We'll see. But in any case, this is it. All the way towards the bottom. And this is pretty much it. Let's do one last round of lifting here around the center like that. Could be a little too much. Let's put some paint back in there, and you can lift and add as much as you see fit. And I think with that we're ready. I'm gonna let this dry, and now we can wrap up this video. I will share the rest of the process on Instagram or anywhere else.
So this is it for this one. I hope you are as impressed by this one as I am, because to me it's going to be a very useful paint, especially painting a lot of urban cityscapes. I need to have a handy muted yellow instead of always having to use my Nickel Azo and then dumbing it down with some French Ultramarine and then some Perylene or some Quinacridone. Now, I don't want to necessarily mix all three when I have a pigment that readily can do that. And this is the one occasion in which I will make an exception and use a pre-mixed. It's not really pre-mixed because it's just one pigment, but I'm going to use a paint that's not necessarily a perfect primary, okay? This can also work really well with burnt sienna, by the way, and French Ultramarine kind of creates this Velasquez palette alongside the ochre. So I really hope you enjoyed this one, and also seeing what it looks like, and also seeing the demo, on which I will update you on Instagram and other places, okay? I will share the final result of this one. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like if you liked this video, and subscribe as well if you still haven't. I have tons of other paint show episodes, demos, and everything that you may be interested in, watercolor or sketching related. I will see you again in another episode and in another vid real soon.